Okay, we'll start. The Sikh is the first Sikh, Parshas Vaera, the Sikh is Chelik Tezayin. The Sikh happens to be a long Sikh, and it's not so simple. So we're going to try to see what we can do about it. Okay, the Rebbe starts like this. I spoke many times. As Choch Rasha is even the Rasha, first and foremost, he explains the simple pshat in the pasuk. Rasha's commentary also contains wondrous things in Shar Chelkei Torah, in other parts of the Torah, and also Yenesh Torah, which means Pnimis Torah, Kabbalah, Chassidus. The Lashon Yonim Efloim comes from the Shalah, as you see in Ha'ara 1. So Rasha contains a lot of things, all kinds of pshat in them. It's drush sod, but mainly it's pshat. But it has all their other drachim and Torah also. But in order to extract, take out from Rasha the inyonim which are in other parts of the Torah, outside of pshat, that from fear upland and pinish Rasha al derech pshat. So we first have to learn Rasha according to the simple pshat, and then we can go further and look into the deeper inyonim Rasha. So now he starts with the Rasha. Nachdem Rasha is mefarish and pirish aposhet from the psukim in Anfang from the Sedre. After Rasha explains the simple pshat in the psukim at the beginning of the Sedre, psukim where it says Vaera Abraham again, and it says Hashem says to Moshe, I reveal myself to Abraham, etc., etc. And I'm going to fulfill the promise I made with them, etc., etc. And Rasha explains the simple pshat of the psukim. Is Rasha Mamshe. Rasha continues. But Rabbi Seinu Darshua, our rabbis, the Chazal, Chachamim darshaned it, that the teichem from these psukim, that the meaning of these psukim, Li'inya Shalmailo, has to do with what it says at the end of the previous Sedre. She'omar Moshe lo ma'arei. So Moshe at the end of Parshas Shmeis, Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Eibishter after he went to do his shlichus and he came to Parei and he asked them to let the Yidden out. So not only didn't it help, Parei made it harder for them. He told them, I'm not even going to give you the straw, the hay that I used to give you till now. So Moshe came back to the Eibishter and he said, lo ma'arei. Why did you make it worse for the Yidden? Hashem said to him, that it's a shame on those who passed away and not here around now. What did he mean? I feel bad. I could express my feeling on the problem, the fact that the Ovis died. In other words, he's telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you're not like the Ovis. Many times I revealed myself to the Ovis using the name Kel Shindalad Yud. And they didn't ask me, what's your name? And you said, Mashmei, that Yidden will ask me, what's your name? What should I tell him? So you question me. The Ovis didn't ask questions. The Gamma Kimesi, and this passage, when it says, I fulfilled my words, my promise, means like this. When Avram wanted to bury Sora, he couldn't find a piece of land till he bought it from a lot of money. Yitzchak they argued against him when it came to digging of the wells. That he dug, that he had to buy a piece of property, and they didn't question my midas. He could have questioned and said, that's what you're doing to us. But you said, and you asked why I made it harder for the Messiah. But Rashi finished off, the pasuk doesn't really fit exactly. I mean, this drash doesn't fit exactly to the words of the pasuk. So this is how Rashi says, it's take in Rabbi Seinu Dorshu, it's the drash of the Chachamim that is after Rashi says the pshat. The Rebbe is going to ask a kasha. In Sof Parsha Shmeis, if in pasuk Atasid and the end of Parsha Shmeis, and the pasuk when Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're going to see, that in the pasuk, this is the answer that Hashem gave to Moshe Rabbeinu when he asked, why did you make it worse for them? The answer was, now you're going to see. So Zokt Rasha says on those words, you questioned my midas. Like Avram, you're not like Avram. I told him that Yitzchak will be the one that your children will come from. He will be considered your continuation. And then I said, take him up as a korban. And you didn't think against me, you didn't question me. Moshe told Moshe Rabbeinu, you're not like Avram. Avram didn't question me when I told him to take Yitzchak to the Akedah, even though I promised him that the whole Hemshech is going to be from Yitzchak, and he didn't question it, and you questioned. That's what Rashi says there. But if we compare the two Rashas, and Rashi says in Parshas Bay, in the Rebbe Seinu Dorsho, compared to what Rashi writes in the end of Parshas, here in Parshas Vaera, compared to Parshas Shmeis, we'll see differences. So that from first thing we have to understand. Pavos in Parshas Vaera, in Pirish for Rabbi Seinu Dorsho now, why in Parshas Vaera, our week's Parsha, when he brings the Pshat of Rabbi Seinu, brings Rashi for Rabbi Seinu Arayeh, Rashi brings from the Chachamim a proof as all obviously all the obvious Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov did not question Hashem's mitzvahs. When he saw Parsha Shmeis, bring the Arayah not from Avraham. In them the Parsha Shmeis, he only brings the Arayah from Avraham. It's one question, a difference. Another question. Avraham Gufa, even concerning Avraham himself, is Rashi Parsha Seinu mefarish the minya from Lehiru Rachamedesai nitanan meir. When Rashi in our Parsha Vaera explains where do we see that Avraham did not question Hashem's mitzvahs, he brings a different happening than what he brings in the end of Parsha Shmeis. It another made another happening. There, here in our Parsha, he says, where do we see he didn't question Hashem? Because when you wanted to bury Sarah, you couldn't get a piece of land unless he paid a lot of money. And it's different being Parsha Shmeis, a different thing. End of Parsha Shmeis, he says, I said to him that Yitzchak will be his child, and now I'm telling him to Shech Yitzchak. It's a different happening that he quotes there and he quotes here, even Avram Gufa. The main thing is, they say Parsha Shmeis, bringt Rashi and Pirish Lehirer Stam. This says Al Zayin Pirish, Pshuto Shel Mikra. In the end of Parsha Shmeis, what Rashi brings that David told Moshe Rabbeinu, you're not like the others, you're not like Avram, who didn't question me, and you are questioning me. He says it as a simple pshat in the posik. He doesn't say this is a drash from Rabbi Seinu. Pshuto Shel Mikra. Hashem Kive Parsha Seinu, in our Parsha, this comes with the Haschola, with the beginning of Rabbi Seinu Dorshua. He starts off by saying this is something that the Rebbe is darshan. It's hadrash. Not only that, but you say them as it goes more. Azadrash Rashi brings the drash, and at the end he says it doesn't fit to the psukim. So here it's different. There it's a simple pshat, and here it's a drash, and the drash it doesn't fit so much. Against what Rashi writes as a rule, as when bringt an agodes is Rashi brought already in Breishis that sometimes he brings from agade, which means from agade from the Chachamim, but he only brings those agadetes or those drash of the Chachamim that fit to the pshat. And here he brings a drash which Rashi himself says doesn't fit to the pshat. While in Parsha Shmeis he says the same idea, not al sadrash al pshuta shemikra. So the Rebbe says v'yeshleimer the letzte diuk parentit koral. The last diuk, the last point that the Rebbe made, that here it's part of a drash, and at the end of Parsha Shmeis, it's not part of the drash, it's pshat. This will explain the differences. In so Parsha Shmeis is Rashi b'farish pshuta shemikla l'asar. Then the Parsha Shmeis, Rashi explains Pasha the pshat in the psukim on the spot. When you learn the posik, Rashi explains the simple pshat in the posik. Ukip pshuta, and if you look at simple pshat, either posik vayemer Hashem Moshe atasira gave it. When Hashem said to Moshe, now you're going to see, is an end for canal of Titus Moshe in the psukim belofon litnezeh. In simple pshat, that's an answer that the Eibishter gave Moshe on what it says in the previous posik. When Moshe complained, Lomai reis olam hazeh, why did you make it that worse for them? And from when I came to speak to Parei, you made it worse for them. And this was the answer. So that fits to what Rashi says. Why? But Moshe was complaining to the Eibishter, not only the shlichus that I did in your name did not save the Eden, didn't help to save the Eden, you didn't save them, nor contrary, you made it worse. That was Moshe Steiner. And the far Atasira, so the Eibishter answers him, Atasira, now you'll see what will happen, but only also the Parei Tira, whatever is going to happen to Parei, the punishment of Parei, you're going to see. But not what's going to happen when the Eibishter is going to take the Eden Teretz Yisrael and destroy the 7 nations, that you're not going to see. And why did the Eibishter answer him that? Since you questions my midas. So the Eibishter told me you punish him. And what did the Eibishter tell him? In Pshat, since you question my midas, you deserve a punishment. Because you shouldn't have questioned. And he brings him a raya. You didn't behave like you should, like Avraham Avinu. Nicht wie die Anhoge darf sein und ist given, but nicht bei Avraham. Not like Anhoge should be. And that happened by in a similar case by Avraham. Was he didn't question my midas. And what does Rashi bring an example? This is all in Pshat. First, I told him Yitzchak will be your children and your continuation. Now I told him take him as a korban. What is this? But the Haftoche had gave him given the Nunzer Fall. The fact that the Eibishter promised Avraham Avinu ki Yitzchak el Korah l'Chazara, and then he told him take him to the Akedah. That promise made Avraham have more tzar. And this is similar to what happened to Moshe Rabbeinu. Just like you're saying, when you spoke in my name, that made it worse, which is exactly what happened to Avraham. Because of what Hashem said, made it worse for Avraham. Hashem had not promised him anything. He told him to take that Akedah. Would also been something to worry about. But it doesn't come to the fact that the Eibishter first promised him the Yitzchak l'Chazara. But I've explained. We see it obviously. The tsar for nicht haben kein Kinder, the pain of not having children, is nicht bedeutet to the Yisurim was mahot, is not similar to the pain that you have when the Eibishter hat schon gebencht mit der Ben Yochid, ulezik nosam. The Eibishter already blessed you with a son, an only son, and to your born in your old age. Und wird noch zugenommen and is taken away. Ubifrat noch, der Tata allein darf es tun, especially the father himself has to do it, has to kill him, so to speak. So what we see here is that what happened by Avraham is the similar case to what happened to Moshe. By Avraham, we see that the promise of the Eibishter is what caused the more pain. Since the Eibishter told him, I'm going to give you children, I'm going to give you Yitzchak, he'll be your child. That caused the pain when they told him to take the Akedah. That caused a great pain. So basically, the Eibishter's promise made the tzar. And nevertheless, Avraham didn't question the Eibishter. By Moshe Rabbeinu, the same thing. You're timing that my words made it worse. Similar to by Avraham, the words of the Eibishter made it worse. And you did question me. So by Mele, we see why he brings Avraham. Because in Avraham, we see the similarity and the comparison. He says, you're not like Avraham in a similar case. And from that, we also understand that Rashi will bring in the Raya as Avraham Lahir Rachamadeisa. That's what Rashi, it doesn't make sense that Rashi should bring over there the proof that he brings over here. And what is the proof that he brings that Avraham didn't question the Eibishter? Where do we see Lahir Rachamadeisa? So from them was Kishabikish lig with a Sora limasa karka. But when he had to bury Sora, he couldn't find land. Came Yitzchak, by Yitzchak, they argued against the wells that he dug. Came Yankim, he had to buy a piece of land when the Eibishter, he couldn't get it for free, so to speak. Couldn't bring these things there. From Dorten is nicht gewinnen an Eifen, as the Aftoche Gufe losses Lemeseres, hat Geiren when as okay from the Karkabadam and Rubin. There you can say that the promise of the Eibishter, what was the whole time? The Eibishter promised him at Yisrael, and here he has to spend money on this, he has to spend money on that, and Yitzchak, they're arguing, and Yaakov had to spend money. But it's not that the promise made them have the Tsar. The Hirur, hat Norgi can sign, what could he have thought? What could he have questioned? As hoben dik darf doch happen in the since I had a promise to get the land, but as Avraham and it gedarf cost Kesar Geld. It shouldn't have cost him any money or a lot of money. There is a Yitzchak Yankiv. So it's not that Avtochem made a promise. It shouldn't have been that way. If you promised me the land, why did I have to pay money for it? The Mele, if that's going to be where we see that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yankiv did not question Hashem, is Bemele is a Zahir, nit kan dukme buchavenes to them as Moshe Mahara given. It's not an exact example to Moshe why he did question. As the Meibish and Shlichas Gufe had given him the Matzah Meir Olam Hazeh. Moshe's question was that your promise caused the problem. Here, it's not the promise caused the problem. Didn't cause a problem. It's even though you promised, you didn't keep your promise. So you could have questions, true. But it's not the same as your promise caused it. And therefore, all Rashi brings is where we see that the promise caused it. That's why Avraham Avinu. David promised you'll have children, and Yitzchak will be your child, etc., etc. And now you're told that promise is making more tzad. That's similar to the case of Moshe. That's only the way it's in Rashi in Parsha Shmeis, where Rashi speaks pshat pshuta shemikro al asar on the spot on the posik, and that fits to the posik. But later, then was Rabbeinu Doshu. But the way that Rabbi Say darshan, the way Rabbi Say Shal Rashi darshan, they darshan a different word. At the ganze Teichen Aksuvim, that all the psukim here, all the meaning of these psukim, Eich Vaera Lavrom Alitzchak Yaakov. And even the words Vaera Lavrom, when he mentions the Ovis, Kum behemshech le'inya shel Maila. Rasha says that comes not as specifically an answer to Moshe Rabbeinu's taina, that why did you make this happen? It's a general thing that the Eibush is telling him, Bechlal, you're different than the others, not because of this taina that. When he's a tale from the Meibish's meine, with Negea, the Shailas, so the Burim, the Rehurim from Moshe Bechlal. The Moshe is answering, Eibush is answering Moshe for Moshe's behavior, not specifically on the taina from the end of the parasha. It goes on the whole inyan, things that Moshe did. Niet mitzaratzan neis of that, and not telling him because I want to have to give you an example that even by an extra tzad that came because my promise, the others, Avraham Avinu didn't question, and you did. It's not going to get at that point that it's covered at tzad. Bechlal, he was telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you're not behaving properly. For some Zechon game, it even starts from Vato Marta Mashrim Emrali. You see, Rasha brings in the Rabbi saying to the shul, Moshe, David Shastanya to Moshe was, the others didn't ask me my name, and you asked my name. Has nothing to do with the time of Loma Reisa. It starts Bechlal, Moshe, David telling Moshe, your behavior is not like the others. So if that's the case, he's moving farvos. Rasha brings Droshas Razal. That's why Rasha brings a drash, because he's not telling you the simple shot of the posuk as an answer to the previous parasha. From alle drei others, and from all the others, because it says Vaera Lavrom Yitzchak Yaakov. So he wants to bring an example from the others. As they alle lehiru Bechlal lachem, and they didn't question me. So it's not an answer specifically on that. So here, Rasha doesn't have to bring Dachke, the case of the Akedah, which shows that he caused the Haftocha caused the Marzah. Here it's V'chlal B'Negeya the Ovis. So Rasha brings that the Ovis did not be Mahared after David, did not question David. And you questioned. You started off by asking me my name, and then you asked B'Negeya why I made it worse, but not that why I made it worse in such a specific case. It's not that. It's just a general discussion and thing that David is telling him. So here he could bring all the others, and he doesn't have to bring dafke from something that the haftocha costs tsar. So here he brings the other things. But you see, they never, even the smaller things, they never question. Why are you questioning? That's one thing why over there he writes the way he writes, and here Rasha writes different. Another pshat you could say. Moshe Rabbeinu asked, why did you make it worse to the Eden? It's not a private thing. But in the gate Tzim Alein, which has to do with Moshe Rabbeinu himself. The Rishayich is Lo Mazet. So he says, why did you do this to the nation? It's a problem I have of what you did to the Yidden Bechlal. The Meile Ken Rash and Derech Hapshat need bring in a dugma from Avram, was it not Maharigim in the gate of Maras Machpelah. He's answering another teretz why over there in Parsha Shmeis he doesn't bring this about the Maras Machpelah. Till now he said because it's here it's negated to all, and it's not negated after the union of the Tsar that he had extra Tsar. But now the Rebbe says another word. Over there wouldn't fit if he would bring that Avram Avinu didn't question the Eibishter when it came to buy the Maras Machpelah, there is a Yitzchak, by the Vaera Yitzchak, by the wells, and for Yankov, you can Chalkas Sodom, Yankov bought the area there in Shem. Why can't he? Das alles einen Yonim, seine Gewinne geht, is sehr allein als Prat. These are things private. These are private things of Avram Yitzchak Yankov. Avram had to spend a lot of money. Yitzchak had problems, they argued against him. Yankov had to spend a lot of money. That's a Prat. And the Riber can mechalik sein. So if Rasha would over there bring that, you know what we would say? Don't bring me a eye. Don't say that the others didn't question and I'm questioning. You know why they didn't question? The reason why they didn't question, they thought to themselves, they should take a promise to give us Eretz Yisrael. The Meili promised to give me Eretz Yisrael. So I should have not have to pay. But you know what? I didn't deserve that this promise should come true. If I was Gora Machet, I'm private thing, you could say probably I didn't deserve it. Maybe I sinned. Rasha said this by Yankiv. The Yankiv Dam to the Eibush, should protect him from Esav. The Eibush promised him I'll protect you. So he said, maybe I don't deserve now. Maybe Gora Machet. The Rebbe stresses, we see it before. See, if Rasha would write something like this later, the Rebbe has a klala. Rasha doesn't rely on something that he didn't say. Rasha is written to a person that just started learning Chumash, doesn't know any Gemara, doesn't know what it says further. Whatever he learned till now, he remembers. We're talking about a person who's smart and understands. If Rasha means to refer to something that's later, Rasha would have said it. Rasha a lot of times refers to things from later to now. So Rasha says it. But when Rasha doesn't say it, then we're going to explain that Rasha meant is something that he said later that can be. So if Rasha would have said this concept that you're afraid maybe you don't deserve that the promise of Hashem should happen, because you get him achet. If Rashi would have not said it to them, maybe that's not Pshuta Shlemikra, such a story. But Rashi, whatever he says, fits the Pshuta Shlemikra. And he said it before. So we know such a concept. So if the Eibusher would say, you see, the others, they didn't complain when they had a private problem. Why are you complaining? So you can't say that over there you should bring a private problem, because you could say, on the private problem, they didn't complain because they felt it's their fault. The time of Mesha was when the gay why David made it bad for Klal Yisrael. Mesha can say, well, why didn't it come true? Because my sin. It's not me, it's the Eden. When the Rebbe brings Rasha up, the Pshute, in so Parsha Shmeis, that's why Rasha over there couldn't bring that they had to pay a lot of money. Because that wouldn't be a real tiny to Mesha Rabbeinu. Because Mesha Rabbeinu's case is different. So therefore, Rasha over there brings Leiki Avraham Shamar to the Yitzchak Korah Chazora. What was it that Avraham didn't complain, didn't question David? And I told him that Yitzchak will be your child. And then I said, bring him as a korban. While Eich Dois is given Negeya, need place Avraham Alein. This is something that's not Negeya specifically to Avraham as an individual, but Lahemshach Kol Adei Sachra. It's Negeya for the whole Hemshach of Gans, all the generations later. The Meili is Eich Doni Chaychach Shashem Megora Machet. So here also it's not Chaychach. Maybe this sin caused that Eibusher shouldn't keep his promise. And Nafal Pekain Lehir Rachamid Deisai. And still he didn't question my midas. Shenkem Yitzchak Yankiv. So he only could bring from Avraham. And only this thing of Avraham. But you couldn't bring from Yitzchak and Yaakov, but by then we don't find that they didn't question the Eibusher when they had to do something with Klal Yisrael. So he couldn't bring, so only brings that. So that's over there. When you say the Poshup Shat and Posik, by yourself it could be anything has to do with you, is no raya that you're so great that you didn't question Hashem, because you don't question Hashem. Maybe you normally would question Hashem. But for yourself, you blame yourself. But this is only the Pshuta Shel Mikra. But later, Rabbi saying the Shu Alpi Medrash, which is a Godesh B'Teira, but Nerash in our Pshat. When he doesn't say the Pshat Pshuta Shel Mikra of the Pasuk, he's saying Rabbi saying the Shu V'ches Farbun mit Nishmos Deraisa. We're talking about Agadat of the Chachamim that's connected to the Neshama of Teira. What's the Neshama of Teira? The inner parts of Teira. And like the Alter Rebbe says in Geras Hakedei, Reif say the Teira Gnuzimbo. In the Agadat, most of the secrets of Torah are hidden there. So if you look at the thing the way it is from the Pnimis Torah, which is from Agadat, the Chovas Heinen and Merkova, that the Ovis are like a chariot. Which what does that mean? Poshup Shat, it means that there's a Merkova with the four sides, and the Ovis are the Merkova. But Tanya Taiches, what does that mean? As Eich Lamate Nelam Hazes ein Zein der Darge from Merkova. Not only the Mila the Merkova. Down here, they're like the Merkova. Below, I like Lamaila. And what does it say in Tanya? What does that mean? That they were completely bottled to Hashem. Just like a wagon is bottled to the rider, the wagon goes. The wagon, we use if you write this now, he would use an example of a car. When you sit down in a car, the car takes you all kinds of places, but the car goes only where the driver wants to take it. The wagon goes where the driver wants to take it. So the Ovis were completely bottled to the Eibusher. Just like Lamaila and the Merkava, it's only a Lakus, they were bottled to Lakus. We can't say what we said before, that in the case where it's a private thing, maybe the Ovis felt that they sinned and they weren't deserving to have the bracha from the haftacha from the Eibusher. That's why it's not ayah from there. Looking at from Pnimis HaTorah, you can't say that on the Ovis, that there was no shlach v'chet. Now, if you can't say that by the Ovis, the Rebbe can bringen as lehi hiru achamedes eich von inyonim was lochura zayin ze protim. If you're looking at the Ovis from that perspective, that's not possible to say that maybe they sin. So then all we're bringing, so even if you bring it from a private thing, even things which are negated and private, the Moras Machpelah by Avraham and Yitzchak the Vaera, by Yankiv the Chalkas Hasoda that you had to buy, you could bring an example from there too. And you can't say, well, there is different because maybe they didn't complain because they blamed it on themselves. Because in Tanya it says they were mamish a merkava bottled to the Eibusher of life. So they know that for sure, from Pnimis HaTorah outlook, you can't say that they thought that they sinned. Well, it makes no difference in your proti or in your kloli. So when it comes to this, Rasha brings from a inya proti also, and when you bring from inya proti, you have to bring from all three because it says Al Avram Yitzchak Yankiv, and Itaka brings all three, and Taka from inyanim protim, and it's still the same complaint to Moshe Rabbeinu. that even by in your proti, which is not shayches, that they sinned and they weren't maharer, so you too shouldn't have been maharer. Why were you maharer? This is all the way that ever learns pshat from the pshuta shemikra aspect, meaning from the simple pshat, the way it's in Parsha Shmeis, and from Rabbi saying the Dorsha. This is still not the Yena Shel Torah. This is all what Rasha writes. He's just explaining Poshet Pshat in the words of what Rasha writes from the perspective of Rabbi saying the Shua. But now he says there's Yena Shel Torah in Rasha, from Yena Shel Torah and then Pirush Rasha. Which Yena Shel Torah is a complete different look at what Rasha says, not the way it seems from the words of Rasha, but deeper. The Shleimer Tosim is in the Shaycha zwischen the Beit HaSbaras of Pirush Rasha now. So you could say that Rebbe says the Yena Shel Torah will be connected to the two Hasbaras that we gave in Rasha. You will see what the Yena Shel Torah is here in this Rasha. And that is like this. As I said once already, I explained at length. We know that it says Maisa Ovis Simon Labonim. Whatever happened to the Ovis is a simon, a sign, not only a sign, and the sin Askeach, it gives the power, it gives the strength to the children, to the Eden, to follow, to do certain things based on what the Ovis did. But in this union of Maisa Ovis, as in them there's two inyonim in Maisa Ovis. The Maisa Ovis, such as you talk about the Ovis in Sadgufam, the way the Ovis did things from their body perspective. When them Yishayches as Avrom soll deigen Hashem a kabaltis charatz kesei. In that perspective, even if they missed the promise of Avrom, it's possible mitzat haguf that you should be afraid. Maybe I got my schar already, and the Eibishter will not keep his promise because I don't deserve it. But from the body perspective, maybe it's like a true. As Obetna Neisal, you saw it's not being made. Avrom even said to Hashem, he said, "You told him, give me the land, give me a sign." Why would he ask that? There is a Bayankiv also. It's possible because from the body part, it's like a shayches. Why? And he brings an example. In the opinion on Sipper from the Zericha Magid, we find the story with the Zericha Magid as a Gizen. It's a long story and it's brought down in the Kevis Mechtovim, the end of Tilim. But the Zericha Magid told the story to the Alter Rebbe. The bottom line is that he saw in the dream as a Gizen Meisher Rabbeinu lent into Nekesha B'Tzrabim, that in the dream the Zericha Magid saw how Meisher Rabbeinu is teaching little children. Then Posik v'Yipel Avram Alponna v'Yitzchak. When David told Avram, "You're going to have a child," Avram fell on his face and he laughed. Vayemer Beliba, and he said in his mind, in his heart, "Halabeh Mei Yeshona Yolad." And when I'm 100 years old, I could have a child. The Sora Abbas teach me Shona Taylor, and the Sora 90 years old could have a child. And a child in this story, in this dream, asked Meisher. Meisher is teaching this posik, and one of the Talmidim asked him, "How is it possible Avram Avinu should question, not believe the Eibush, and should laugh?" And Meisher Rabbeinu answered him, and he said, "Mazvir, as a mikra yitzim pshute." The posik is pshute, and the way it says there is that I feel a guf kodesh gufu, even a holy body like Avram Avinu is still for the body, and it's possible. So you have Maisa others, the way it's mitzad the guf, as the Mezritch Magid said there. That's what the story goes to Hashem to explain it, whatever. So the Mezritch, so what do you say that the guf is a guf? So if looking from the guf, it's possible that Avram Avinu should also ask questions. So that's one type of Maisa. Then there's a second type of Maisa. What they did, the way that it accomplished, it affected from the perspective of the neshama. But in them is clearly shaychus kenir rachamid. There is not shaychus that the Ovis should think, question the Eibishter in any form or shape is not shaychus. But that's one thing that the Rebbe said many once before, more than once, that there's two types the way we look at Maisa. When the Rebbe says, and I explain, and the Pirushim in Pirush Rasha al derech pshat. What Rasha says pshat is guf, which is the guf of the Torah. Pshat is like the body. Whenever Rasha says something that the Ovis did, it's the way it's from the perspective of the guf, which fits to pshat. Pshat is very simple. Simple means the way it's down to earth. Simple. That the way it's the gashmi is ha'elam. When the Pirushim al derech hamedrash, agodash b'teidah, Pirushim and medrash, the Maisa is antar neshama. That is the way the Maisa, what the Ovis did, the way we look at it from the perspective of the neshama. What does that mean? So in our case, like this. In Pirush, Rasha saw Parsha Shmeis versus Al Derech HaPshat there, where he speaks Pshat, like we said before. Rasha explains on the Posik as a Pshat that the Eibishter answered Meisher Rabbeinu on his Steiner, and he said, Atasir, etc. There it's talking about what happened to the Ovis, but from the perspective of the body. So you can bring a raya to Meisher Rabbeinu's question. Why did you make bad worse for this nation, which is talking about the Eden, not about himself? From them was lehira ruben in your name aproti. Araya, you're not like the others because they didn't question me when it came to, and to bring an example of the private inyonim. Vibaldes can sein as Avram tracht shemek gebalt ischar. Yes, it's not the goof, it's not pshat. Yes, it's possible. Avram did not question the Eibishter, not because he doesn't question the Eibishter B'klal, because in this case he has a way to explain why it didn't happen, because he didn't deserve it. The Eibishter gave him schar already. There's a Bayankiv, he said that, but that's only if you look at it from the present, the body. It's possible, and that's the pshat. That's why over there Rasha writes it from the body side, because he explains pshat. Pshat has to do with the goof. Schenkel later Rabbi saying Darshua, but according to what he says in Parshas Vaera, that the Rabbi saying the Darshan, which is Agoda Shabbatayra, but Leib say the Satayra Gedusim, both the say the Satayra are there. So this is looking at from deeper, looking at from the neshama, because we know that pshat and seid is pshat is the goof of Torah, and seid is in the shmos of the right. It says in Zayah Galoshin, the pshat or the other drachim of Torah is goof or deiraisa, and pnimis HaTorah is nishmos of the right. So when you look at pshat, it's from the goof of the Torah, so it's from the goof of the others. When you learn in drash, which we're saying not from the drash perspective, but from the seides HaTorah that's there, the yena shel Torah, it's called nishmos of the right. That's looking from the neshama. So if you look at the others from the neshama side, is there inyan for my others inside on neshama? If you the inyan is inside on neshama, is a raya eich from them was the others lehiru ben yigeya zerinyan in protein. You could also bring a raya like it does in Parsha Shmeis, which is from Rabbi Senya Doshua, even from their prototic is done. Why could we bring a raya even the fact that they didn't question from their protim? Because here from the neshama side, you can't say that this is no raya, because since it's their own thing, maybe they felt that they're not deserving it. They can't feel that way. Inside the neshama, it's not shaykh. Looking for the neshama there, they were Amerikova, there's not shaykh that they should question. So there's no difference if it's a Inya Prati or a Inya Kloli. So you can bring a raya from Inya Prati also, and you can bring a raya from all three. Al derech zeh, now the Rebbe goes further. This will also bring us to understand the difference when the gay Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Das was Moshe getainet in Seif Parshas Shmeis, Lama Reis Lama Zeh. Moshe said, and then Shmeis, why did you make it worse for these people? When I came to Parah to speak in your name, you made it worse for them. So way you look at it, like Pshuta Shlemikro, it does give him Mitzad Eif and Aleph. And Pshuta Shlemikro is always looking Mitzad the goof. Yes. From the goof side, as we said before, from the goof part, it's possible that the others were Maharer, would have been Maharer. And Moshe Rabbeinu Taka, you could say he was Maharer. The lotion there is, I'm complaining why you sent me, which is a tiny clap at the Meibishten Kiviyochel, a tiny to the Eibishter Kiviyochel as ein Shlichus had given him the Matze von Heira for Eden. That your Shlichus made it worse for the Eden. And the Rebbe is the Reinish, therefore the Eibishter punished him. And he said, now you'll see what happens to Parei, also the Parei Tira, and you'll see now, but that's Yisrael, you won't go in. Makes sense. So that's the way Rashi is there. So not only from the other side, what Rashi brings is different from here and there, even from Moshe Rabbeinu. The way it's in Pshuta Shel Mikro, Moshe Rabbeinu Taka complained, and the Taka was Maharer after the Eibishter. But that's from the Yena Shel Teina perspective. When you look the deeper pshat, we say that this is Mitzad Aguf. Mitzad Aguf, it's possible. In Shmeis, in Vaera, when it's based on what the Rabbi Senya Darshan, goes according to the second way in Maisa Oves, and the same thing with Moshe Rabbeinu. You can't say when Moshe said, the Pasha was complaining against David. You can't say. When I got a punishment for that. You can't say that. Why? Moshe Rabbeinu, you can't say Moshe Rabbeinu sinned, or Moshe Rabbeinu was Maharer after David. From the Neshama, just like by the Ovis, you can't say. You can't say Moshe Rabbeinu either. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu mean according to this? When he said but the Taina is Bashtan, the Taina wasn't this. What did the Eibishter complain? The way it says in Drash, in this week's Parsha in Rashi. How is he comparing him to Ovis? And you're not like the Ovis. The Ovis did not ask me, what's your name? And you asked me, what's your name? That's the complaint. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do the way Rashi says? He asked the Eibishter for his name. And the Eibishter mentioned to him, they didn't and you did. Is that a complaint? Can you complain against Moshe Rabbeinu why he asked for the name? Hainu, was er a gewollt wissen, Shimcha Godel HaKodesh. All it is, yeah, he asked his name. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to know the Eibish's holy name. Say Shema Meferish. What's the secret behind Shema Meferish? And why did he want to have that name, know the name? If he would know the name, he would have an hasogin understanding in knowing the Eibush in a higher level. Shem Havaya. Till now, it's not Shem Havaya, it's just a lower level. I want to know a higher level, which is like Rasha says, Midas Amita Shali. Rasha says that the Galak Shadak not with the Shem Amita Shali, which is Shem Etzem. Shem Havaya has a few names. Shem Ferish, Shem Yuchet, Shem Etzem, higher Madregas. That's the Midas Amita Shali. Moshe Rabbeinu Poshet wanted to reach a higher Madrege. So B'meila, when he asked Eibish's name, it's not anything wrong. Farkez, he's looking to get closer to higher Madrege V'Lakus. When I feel it does for Gezok, Lama Reisha Lama Zem, when he said, why did you make it worse for the Eden? It's not that you really question, thinking against what Eibish was saying. What he asked was one thing. I want to understand with my seichel alle protim und drochim von Eibish's shlichus. I want to understand what's behind the shlichus of the Eibish. Not that he's questioning the Eibish, why did you do that? There's two ways you could say. You could say, why did you do it? As if saying you shouldn't have done it. And what you did it was wrong. Or you could say, he's asking, please explain to me. This is such a deep thing. My seichel leksach nicht. I don't understand my seichel. There must be definitely a deeper reason. I'd like to understand it. And in Chelik Gimel, the Rebbe explains it. Moshe Rabbeinu was Madregas HaChochmeh. That was his Kabbalah, his Chochmeh. What's Chochmeh? Chochmeh is to understand. So Moshe Rabbeinu just said, I want to understand. In other words, it depends how you sing it. You could sing, hey, Lama Reis Lama Zeh. And you could say, could you explain to me, Lama Reis Lama Zeh? Why did you do it? To explain it to me, I'd like to know. When Rashi sagt by Rabbi Senya Dershua, when Rashi brings in Parashas Vaera, the Drash of the Chachomim, he doesn't bring them Loshen Hirharto Amadesai when he talks about Moshe, he doesn't say Hirharto. When he talks about the Ovis, he says the word, but not when he talks about Moshe. There in the Parashas Shmei, he says, yeah, well, why did you Mahara Rachamedesai? But here it's not really Lahira Rachamedesai. Here Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to know Shem Havaya. He wanted to know what the deeper understanding in the shlichus, what the Eibishter did when he made it worse, etc., etc. But that's because we're looking for the Seigneur Dorshua from the Pnimis Atera. Pnimis Atera, it's not possible to say Kipshut. You can aber fragen, you can still ask. Even the first way, which is Mitzad Aguf, can you really say that the Moshe was Maharer after Medesa? He questioned Poshet Eibishter. We're talking about Moshe. It was life from geboren werden, soon as he was born already. Soon as he was born, it was Tev. What does Tev mean? He saw that he was good. Rashi in Spalabai school, the house became full of light. In Svarim, it says it's not the gate to the Sikha, it means Eira is a Torah, but he brought light into the world. So he was great from beginning. So how could you say Moshe was Maharer? And not only that, we're stressing that the Ovis were not Maharer. The Moshe was the chosen human being, which means Eich from the Ovis. He was chosen even greater than the Ovis. But yeah, Maharer could be he was Maharer. So the Shail is even the way we said before, Pshutish Mikra, Mitzad Haguf, it's Shaykh as Moshe was Maharer. It's not, you can't say that. Moshe was Maharer, such a person, not Shaykh. If someone is a recover, it's not Shaykh as even say by mistake. There's no mistakes. Just like if your life is geared and is programmed, so to speak, program yourself to be what David wants. You can't even make a mistake. And the Marshal is given. No one could say I made a mistake and I put my finger in fire, forgetting or I made a mistake that fire burns. Why? Maybe you made a mistake. It's so part of life that you know that doesn't burn. Even Abhemet says that jumps into fire is safe because we know that it's probably crazy. There's something wrong with the brain. Normally a person doesn't do it. So the others would go against their whole Metzias was the Eibishter. But here the Kasha is Moshe Rabbeinu. How could you say that Moshe Rabbeinu? Eif davon verstehen, Kasha is more. Bald as I feel the news Behemet table since the Torah doesn't usually talk about even an embarrassment, something negative, even about a non-kosher Behemet. is of shit ben Yidden. Certainly, by Yidden, the Torah wouldn't talk negative. Ach, come, Moshe Rabbeinu, a certain Moshe Rabbeinu. I favor the Torah Moshe. Why would the Torah tell us? No, but even if we'd say somehow, yeah, why would the Torah tell us that? That he questioned David, he thought in his mind against David's midas. What could this teach a Yid a lesson in serving Hashem? You could answer very simple. It's written to teach a Yid, don't do that. That Moshe Rabbeinu did something wrong and you should not behave that way. It's schwer zu sagen. It's hard to say at the fun darf a Yid uplernen that from this a Yid should learn a wieviel man muss ein abgehit vom Harer sein nach Melechus Kodesh Baruch Hu. How far you have to be careful not to be Maharer after the minutes of David. Now, man darf sich führen, like the Anoge von the Ovis was layer, and you have to behave like the Ovis that layer. Maybe that's the lesson. Hard to say. But no one's going to take such a lesson. You know why? For Rebel, that's Moshe Rabbeinu said that mitzvah gekommen. Everyone's going to say, give me a lesson, I should do that. If Moshe Rabbeinu didn't reach there, if he meant them as by Yed Midden B'chol Zman, how do you expect every Yidden all the time should do it? So obviously that's not the lesson. So what is the reason to tell us B'chal this whole thing? So, and the Kasha is even a derech hapshat, where we said mitzad haguf it could happen. Wer kann das verstehen al der Abir, was Rashi stellt sich auf ein Wort Vaera. Okay, there goes another Indian, and we'll get back. We see that Rashi quotes from the pasuk Vaera el Avraham Yitzchak v'Yankov. Rashi quotes the word Vaera, and his mafarish. What's his commentary? El Havis. Who did he reveal himself to the others? Is he do the Kasha v'Meforshim fragen? We know the Kasha v'Meforshim ask. The pasuk al Leib taich tachu is gleich. The pasuk itself explains Vaera el Avraham el Yitzchak v'Yankov. Is was Gita Rashi to was Rashi adding a lot of it. The pasuk says that this was Avraham Yitzchak. So the Meforshim answer, but the Rebbe gives one answer like this. Is the Asbor in them? The answer is like this. Rashi is the mitus in Samaz, but Rashi is interested in explaining this that the Eibishter revealed himself to Avraham, which is something special, obviously. Ria and Elakus, I revealed myself to Avraham means I made Avraham see me, which means there was Avraham had a Ria, whichever. In his mind, he had a seeing, a sight of a lakus. Bevadoes. When you say seeing means bevadoes or mukshis. Mukshis means real. Because you can't see the Eibishter. So how do you use the word, I showed myself to Avraham? What it means is, just like when you see something, it's vadai. When you hear something, it's not vadai. I heard something and I believe you. So I know for sure it's there. But if someone will come and tell me, couldn't happen. Prove to me that didn't happen. So I say, okay, probably didn't. But if I saw something, you can't disprove it. If someone will come and bring me all kinds of kashas why it couldn't happen, what I'll tell them? I don't know. But I saw it, finished. Doesn't change. So seeing means vados. Avraham Avinu saw a lakus in a real way, in a vadai way, a vadai, a certainly way. Mukhshi is something that's correct when you see something. Vivadosh al-deiriya gashmi is just like when you see something with your physical eyes, it's vadai and it's mukhshis. But the Father was saying they say that's why. He's saying when the Rashi says Vaera Ela Oves, he says, what does that mean? The Oves had Vaera. And what does the Rashi continue saying? And they saw the Kus, they saw me, they saw the Vadois of David, and they not Shaykhs here Rachamades. And therefore the Oves is not like you tell Mesha. They were not able to be mad of the Oves. So this that they had, this Maila of Vaera from the Eibishter. So Rashi is telling us from the Gehat als Ovis from the Bnei Yisrael. They had it because they are the forefathers of the Eden, not because of their personal milas. Das heißt, als Vaera gegeben geworden zu Bzei, this Vaera that they got is in a Eifma, das are upcoming Birusha from the Ovis to the Bonim. The Eibusha gave it not because of them, he gave it to them as father. What's a father? The father, the Gemara says in Babakame, Ovis Mechal Dika told us, the father is if you have a child. So he says he gave it to him as a father. In other words, you should give it to your children. Noch ze after them. For Ma'av Zeicha Lebnei, because it says in the Mishnah, the father Taka is Zeicha to his children, Bnei, and certain things, in beauty and things like that, and the Chochmeh. So the Eibishter revealed himself to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yankov, to als Ovis. Was im Avoyer in Teira Eir, from the Parsha, it says in Teira, this week's Parsha, Minyan from Enkein Novis El Shleisha. It says in Gemara that you could only refer to Ovis in davening. Only to these three, you can't call Ovis, even if it's your forefather, you only could davening mention Avisenu, is Avraham Yitzchak Yankov. Why? As B'chinas Ovis, Yerusha Lebnei Machem Echoldeir, only the level of the Ovis is an inheritance to the children in all generations, because B'chinas Ovis Serechli is Becholot, and everyone has to have a union of the Ovis. So when David said Vaera, he gave him something. He gave him the union of understanding and the upleg, the really feeling of the kus in a real way. He gave it to them not because for them. He gave it to them so they could give it to the children. Und das ist der time of the time of the Rebbe Shabbat zu Moshe Rabbeinu. This is why the Rebbe had a time to Moshe. Chaval all the Abdim bring stark in bad is for those that are lost and not here. Why? He said to him like this: Bald as Vaera Lavrom. He's given als so obvious when he says the Rebbe starts off like this: Vaera Lavrom Zakrashe. Why did he give it to Avrom? Because he gave it to Mazoves. He's not talking Ort verentfern as Avrom gave me seinen anders. You can't answer that. You can't compare. Avrom is different. Yitzchak is different. Yaakov are different. I'm in a lower level. You can't answer in a lower level. The balda the resich als ovis is bechol odem als ben darf sein wie sich onnen die Prinz Vaera. If als ovis, every year has to have this Vaera because the Eibush Lechatchila gave him to pass it down. Hoffentlich does be Yerusha. Yeah, be Yerusha. So when you say the Eibush Lechatchila to Moshe Rabbeinu, I feel in derech apshat, it was because you're yashing it from the ovis. This doesn't answer the question yet. This is just a hakdome. The question that we're dealing with now is even in derech apshat, how's it possible that Moshe was maharer after the Eibush? That's a shayla. He didn't answer it yet. He just starts off by this nekuda that when the Eibush complained to Moshe, he complained to him, the ovis. Why did he mention the ovis? Because the ovis had it to pass it down to everybody, so to you too. And that's the Eibush complaint. You should have had, and you can't tell me the ovis are different. You should have been like those. But we still could make a distinction and say like this. And even though the father gives over an inheritance to everything that he has to his child, and that's wegen this movement, what we could understand, as when they come to the next generation, kommen sie nicht zu der Meile, was sie haben gehabt bei seinem Mamav. Taka, father gives over his miles, but as it goes, it diminishes. So it's not to say, why do we say that since it's the Vaera that the Ovis had should have been by Moshe the same way, and because it was given to them in order to hand it down to the later generations. But even when you hand it down to later generations, it could be still weaker. And if so, you could answer the darkest Vaera was the Ben of the Yerusha, that the level of Vaera that the child has as an inheritance kommt nicht zu der hechere Darge from Vaera, which is doing by the others. It's not similar to the higher Madrigas. How could the Eibush complain to Moshe Rabbeinu? He's the beer in them. Eich marubas in Pirish Rashi. So the answer to this is also in Rashi. Vaera el ha'ovis. Rashi says like this. Vaera, and Rashi says el ha'ovis, which means the ganze gilut from Vaera is given to the ovis. See, till now he just said, I gave it to the ovis, and they should pass it down. So you could say, okay, the ovis got it. The higher level. When they passed it down, automatically it became less. But he says, no, I gave it to them lechatchila als ovis. The hainu as the gilu is nit mitzad un leit zeir madregim yuchedes mavedas Hashem. I didn't give it to them because each one in his level of service Hashem, he deserves this Vaera. Avram was Avram was loved Hashem in kav ha'ava, in the way of midah of love. Pachad Yitzchak, the kav ha'gvura. Yitzchak was fear, gvura. It's not that he didn't give it because Avram is midas ha'chesed and Yitzchak is gvura and tiferes. Nor in ganze verbunden mit ihnen was seinen ovis. The only reason I gave it to him is because they are ovis. And ovis means subonim. They are ovis of the children. And aben yeresh hakel. So David gave it to them because of the children. The male is moving as in them Vaera is nitoke chilik zwischen ovis subonim. So therefore, you can't say that the children are less level, and you can't complain because I gave it to Lechatchila because of the children. And explains the Yisr and the Ma'ilus is doing the Mavlagab and Ben. When we say the father is in a higher madrege than the Ben. That's his own madrege. When we talk about his Maila and his madrege in Avedis Hashem, it's higher than the other one. Als Eved Hashem, because he's a servant of Hashem. Even things that he accomplishes on his own is also given over to the children. Kenal b'Mishnah, like it says in the Mishnah, Ha'av Meidish, that he gives over Chochmeh. True. So that he gives over. Could be, but the original one, it's not, it's a higher target. The lower, the Yiddish, the air doesn't have it in the same level, even though he has it. But in our case, but the ilu from Vaera Kadosh Baruch Hu mitzad atzmi so obvious that why did Eibush himself reveal is not to them, and then they could give it over to later. The Chatchila is because they are over. But the Teiru Metzias Machtuv dem Ben, who makes the title of The Ben makes the title Av. If you don't have a child, then you're not called Av. So the Ben makes it. So the whole thing is made for the Ben. He's moving out. So the Maila, the way it's by the father, will come and inherit it to the children. So the Pale comes out from here that Moshe Rabbeinu and the children have the same level of the Ovis. Now is noch mehr nicht verstanden. So now we're coming back to the question even stronger. Since every year, certainly Moshe Rabbeinu had the full Yerusha of the Ovis of the Vaera, which means to recognize the truth of Hashem. Wie kommt es? But das hat nicht aufgehalten Moshe Rabbeinu from here. They say, how could it stop? How come I didn't stop Moshe Rabbeinu from questioning David? So when it started in the Sif, hey, this question, even in Derech Hapshat, how could you do it? And he started by answering. So the previous Sif didn't answer it. It just brought out what the Teichen is. The Teichen is David to complain to Moshe, and he said, you should have been like the Ovis, because the Ovis had this, you should also have it. You could say maybe the Ovis had it more, even though I got it as a Yiddish, but in this case, the Ovis didn't have it more, because it was given to him for your sake, for the children's sake. And B'meile, what comes out, we didn't answer the question, we made the question stronger. Now the question is, how could you say Moshe Rabbeinu was Mahar Racham Adesov, and he didn't have this Vaera, which makes a person not question David? So the explanation is like this. Chazal say like this. Like Nigal Yisrael Mitzrayim al B'schar HaMonah. Yidden went out of Mitzrayim only in the schar of having a money. What does that mean? What's a money? The says by Zeis and Gal given in the Kudas Yadis. Like Yidden was a money. A money is that there was a revelation of we call it the Pintelei, the revelation of the Etzem of the Neshama. The Verbund von Yidden mit dem Eibishter, the connection from Yidden to the Eibishter. But das drückt sich aus in der Emunah von Yidden dem Eibishter. This expresses itself, Yid believes in the Eibishter, and whatever the Eibishter does, that comes from the Neshama of a Yid. And since they had that, it was revealed within them. That made them deserving, they should become out of Mitzrayim. Okay. And Rebbe explains this. This happened by Yitzias Mitzrayim, that they got this revelation, this feeling of Amunah to the Eibishter, and therefore they were supposed to go out. Now, the Rebbe explained, even though before, while they were in that deep hardships of Golas, they also had Amunah. So, what changed here? It says, they're believers, children of believers, which means the reason they had Amunah because they yashed it from the previous generations. They had the Yerusha. Is only time begilud. In the matzav, in welchem matzav the bonim is only time begilud. They had this Yerusha, no matter what situation they are. In other words, no matter how they behave, they still had the Yerusha, the Amunah from David. But that's all not because of their matzav could have been not that way, but because they yashin it from David, they had Amunah, which means they only had Amunah because of David. Aber mitzad inyonim vavidosim from the Eden, but from their own level, from their own aveda, mitzad chunas habonim matzam from the style and the quality of the children themselves. They didn't have the complete Gil of Amunah. What was missing? And the Rebbe uses the Lashon Orei Amunah. He doesn't elaborate. What it means is, Orei Amunah means, Orei with the iron, you have to graze on Amunah. You have to eat Amunah. Grazing like the animals graze, that's called Mira. You didn't have to eat them. How do you eat Amunah? Amunah is not food. What it means is, you could have Amunah b'derech makiv, and you can have Amunah b'derech pnimis. You could have Amunah b'derech, you believe. But it doesn't mean it really is part of you. The best proof is, the Gemara says, you could go steal and daven to the Eibishter to help you. If you steal, obviously you don't believe in the Eibishter, you don't. So why are you davening? And if you're davening to him, then how do you steal? The answer is he believes, but when push comes to shove, it doesn't affect his behavior. Because it's not in the pnimi, it's a superficial thing. You have to have a munah, like food that you eat, becomes part of you, it has to become real. At the time of Mitzrayim, when they went out of Mitzrayim, they had inherited the munah, but the munah was makif. It wasn't ureim when they didn't have it in the pnimis yet. It didn't become their munah. It's within them, shine the concept of a munah. But they are the Eden from Mitzrayim, it's at Zeire, but in order to go out of Mitzrayim from their own right, their own schuz, does all say Zeir schad, they should deserve the schad. For the Yerusha dik emunah and iskasha hat nicht mit Neibishten. So this emunah that they get the Yerusha, and this iskasha that they get the Yerusha to the Eibishter, die darf bei sie werden Zeires ha'egerenim. Had to become there's something there. It had to become part of them. When did it become part of them? That's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. In addition to what they had before from the others. Moshe Rabbeinu added something. Warum in dem besteht der Chilek zwischen der Shochesh al Avos und al Moshe. This is the difference between what happened, what came through the Avos and what came through Moshe. Sat Prinas Avos genau from looking from the Prin of the Avos in the Nekudas Hayadis v'Mona Vayeder Eden and Leib Shal Yerusha. That every person has this Nekudas Hayadis. Every person has this Mona from the Avos the Yerusha. That is B'Teve Mitzad Hayelod. It's your nature. That's how you're born. Zayin Dikaben of Aram Yitzchak Yankov, being a child, a descendant of Aram Yitzchak Yankov. But Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Hasholem. But Moshe Rabbeinu, he did something else. Sneisef of them of Moshe was Eris from the Shiva Reim and Mamshich and Chayis of Bakus Lekos and Shomas Yisrael. So Lashon Tanya that Moshe Rabbeinu is from the 7 shepherds that Gemara says that bring Chayis and Lekus to all the Eden. So he's one of the 7. He's a Klolos Kulam. He's the main one of them all. The Nikra Rayam, he is called Rayam. Rayam has 2 meanings. One meaning Rayam is the faithful shepherd. Rayam has a meaning, the shepherd of faith, the feeder of faith, the one that feeds. The shepherd feeds his flock. Moshe Rabbeinu is his mission, so that his job is to feed the Emunah, to make the Emunah by the Eden come in the Pnimius. He feeds and is mashpia as the Emunah was his do by Eden, so zaynurei Emunah, Pnimius. The Emunah the Eden have anyway should be in a form like he eats. It should become part of them. This is the Lashon Teireh. The Emunah should be strong, complete, but nogo at Pnimis HaNefesh, and should affect the Pnimis HaNefesh. It should be real. The fact that there's a Eibishter and the trusting in the Eibish and believing in the Eibish is real, more real than Gashmis. Was demult where the Emunah durchnehmen sein ganzer Mahus in Kol and Yonah bis zum Eisel Apel. Then the Emunah will penetrate into every part of him, into his action, that he will behave certainly that way. That's what the union of the difference between Moshe and Ovis. Now that Alpia now that we verstehen, now we'll understand the Teichon Inyan from Shailas Moshe Rabbeinu Lomar Eiso. When Moshe Rabbeinu asked, why did you make it worse for the Eden? But the Torah itself taking them. The Torah tells about Hagamas of Avram and Avram didn't, and Shuvas Hakadosh Baruch Hu Ve'ela Ovis and David to answer, I revealed myself to the Ovis. Now we'll understand why. The Baal has schon gehalten on to the Gula, since it was close to the Gula. Und Moshe is gegangen, B'shlichus Hakadosh Baruch Hu is lesen the Eden. And Moshe Rabbeinu went. The Shlichus of the Eibishter to redeem the Eden hat gedarf der Verbund von Eden mit dem Eibishter shall the Emunah sein bei sein Eden leist mit seiner Ovis maminim bnei maminim norecha the Emunah soll sie durchnehmen mit seinen Yonim betechnen. At this point already it had to be that the Eden have to go out from Golos, not because they have this Emunah in a makif in a superficial way. Now came the time, but it shouldn't only be because they're believers, children of believers. It's all because of the Ovis. So the Emunah has to come penetrate into them, and it should come from their side. That's what it means Moshe questioned. Moshe Rabbeinu's question, and Moshe's thinking, after they, so why did you make it worse? When I came to party, made it worse. Was of them is gekommen, der Dibra Kadosh Baruch Hu Vaera, and David answered Vaera. The Hainu, what David was answering him, he had a question, David answered him Vaera, as Pchinas Vaera. David told him like this, the level of Vaera, which is the Tachlis Hamtis, the main uplink, the main understanding of the Riyah, or the Iskashus von Eden mit der Lakusha al the Amunah, that the connection Eden have to David through Amunah is given. At this point, David is telling him, now it's going to happen like you're supposed to do. Now it's coming even from their side. They are in a level, they have Amunah, but you still could question David, because if it's not in the Pnimis, you can still question David. Now what's happening? Uvgiton der Ilui from Vaera. Now it will happen Vaera. The Shleimus Amunah of Hashem. Now will they be complete? But Meila the Shlila Gemara from Yerachim. Now you won't be able to be Mahar because you have the complete Amunah. The Rebbe like this. Zokt Rashi v'Sof Pasha Shmei Sehat Tamidei say. In the end of Pasha Shmei, Rashi says like this. In Derech Hapshat, Mitzad Aguf, David says to Moshe, you questioned my midas. You thought of my midas. Like Avram was Leirachim. Not like Avram that didn't think. What does Rashi mean with that? The meat is Ramadgish at the Pchina from Lei Hirer, was he Doba Moshe, by Allah Yidin said Avram. He says like this: Avram was not Maharir. And every Yid has that, because we all yashin it from Avram. But that is not maspik, it's not enough. The Baldas said, Asma Begilui Hirarta. He said like this to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Begilui, you were Maharir. Now Be'etzim not, but that's not enough. That Be'etzim you have the money. You have to have the money Begilui. From Dos Zanini Vaskum Yerusha, the one that you have which is still Shaykh's Hirur, is because you got it only be Yerush, it's not you. But Yusuf and Ben Gufa, but looking for the nation, Mitzis of the child, Ken Zainer is Maharer, could be Maharer. Und der Ruf zu Meishe given as Eich Odem Hart of kein Ort nicht haben. And Meishe peiled that this Hirur, which is only B'Dibur, but in Pnimius, you don't have the Hirur, should also not be. And through Dibur HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Gilui from Vaera, that's what Eibush answered him. So basically what it means, Meishe Rabbeinu was Maharer, means that at that point there's a level of Hirur. Why? Because B'churi shouldn't be Maharer. Why shouldn't I be Maharer? Because the Ovis would Maharer not Yarshin. Yeah, but if you only Yarshin from the Ovis, the Emunah, which brings you not to be Maharer, that's not enough. At this point, that's not, because then the not Hirur is a Pnimius, but is inside you. But it's only superficial, but not real. Now we'll even more understand the division of Rashi al derech hapshat, the way he says and saves the end of Parsha Shmeis, and Apira b'seinu der Shu, der b'seinu in our Parsha. And he said like this. We said before that the Pirushim that in Rashi al Pshat is Mitzad Guf. Is need the Pshat, and we asked, if Mitzad Guf, how could it be a hero? Now we come to this point. It's need the Pshat, and Mitzad Guf is Shalmeishi Shaykh Aninya from the Hirartam Vesike Pshat Chashom. Not that what we said before, seeing that way, selling that's not the Pshat. Not that because of the Guf, even Moshe Rabbeinu could be married after the Eibush. But the Baldas Tevu canal, get us nit north of Hirartam Vesike. Moshe was born good. It's not possible that he should be married. So the Pirish Bezei is Ader Inyan wird getonnen an Eif, was ken in Pashtas v'chetzenius always getayt shvern wie here. Oh, Moshe Rabbeinu was not married. But the way he expressed himself, if you look at from the Pshat side, it's expressed himself that looks as if he was Maharer in a partial, simple way, which is a chet. But that's if you look from Pshat. When the Riber al derech Pshat, when you look in Pshat, Guf HaTeirah, which is the body of Teirah, was a Shaykh Tziyad Eden Beis Matzav Shu, which is connected to every, no matter how he is. Vertus Uzgitaych as Halta Amadeus Kipshute. From Pshat, it looks as if you Mahar Kipshute. So the Kash after the Rebbe said before Mitzad Guf he was Maharer. Then the Rebbe asked, how could you say that? Even Mitzad Guf of the Ovis and Guf of Moshe Rabbeinu. So now he's saying, Mitzad Pshat, we look at it from the Chetzeni, from the outward side, it looks like your Harta. So that's what you could choose. And why is it like that? That it looks like Hirharta? Because since the Vaera, which is the real Amunah, we have to cause by every Yid. We're talking by every Yid. Even a Yid with the Guf covers up on his Neshama. So much that the Pintel Yid is not Meish, doesn't shine really. The Amunah doesn't shine. When it comes out, you could be Maharer. When the Guf and the Guf is able to ask for my race. The Guf is able to ask. There are certain Yidden that the Chetzenius are able to ask. So what the Eibishter wants, or Moshe wanted to do, and even by them, through Moshe, it's Kelo Kol Yisrael, he includes all the Yidden, the Gilui from Vaera, even they should have it. The Gilui, Haisamtus, Veiskasha Shal the Amunah, the Gilui, the revelation of the real Iskashas of Yidden to the Eibishter through Amunah, which makes it Shlila from them here. It can be here. And it becomes the opposite of here. So it comes out like this. Nupshat, that when Rashi says in the end of Shmeis that Moshe was Maharer Racham B'Deitz HaKadosh Baruch Hu, means in Pshat the way you look at it from the Chetzenius. The Chetzenius, yes, he asked Lama Reis, it looks like that. Why did that happen? Because the Eibishter wants it, that the Vaera, which represents the bringing out the Emunah in a real pneumistic way, should affect even those people who are able to be Maharer. That the Emunah that he had before is superficial. That's why it had to be that it's Maharer. In Pshat, it looks like Maharer. And the answer of the Eibishter was Vaera. That means even the people who are Shaykhs to be Maharer, like by Moshe Rabbeinu, the way it looked at least, even to them is Vaera. That's only in Shmeis. But according to Rabbi Seinu, which is in the Shomer, that means that by Yadin life in the Shomer, from that you don't, by every it shines in the Shomer. But it's Mitzad Zeh, and Shaykhs in Hatam Adesik Pshut. It's according to that Pshat, according to that way of looking, it's Bechalna Shaykhs, even it should look like Hatam Adesik. From that perspective, what it measures, it doesn't look like it happened. He was just asking, requesting to know the name of the Eibishter. Verstehen lo maris. He just asked, I want to understand what is the reason behind why you made it worse. Eif beseichel, want to understand in seichel. Now, Moshe had sich aufgetan nur Emunah, and because Moshe wanted to understand it, this made as Eich in seichel soll sich onhand the Emunah, and he samt es in the Kuz b'chinas ve'ir. And now they became like, when is something part of you, if you understand it? That's exactly what happened. David made you should understand it. This is Hecher Farchochem B'tas, to understand what David is doing, even higher than Seichel, that Seichel doesn't understand. And now David made him understand it, which really means in simple words, now David made that the Emunah should be in a pnimius by all the Eden, in a matzav, that now there is no such thing as even if looks like Maharta, they say. So derech hapsha from the goof, it could be that it looks like a harta. And the purpose is so those people who could be the harta should change. But mitzad pnimius, you don't have to change. Every year is like that. So there's no hero to begin with. It's only requesting to understand. Apia now wird man verstehen die Scheiches von Chodal Tevis, Yemi Lule von Alter Rebbe zu Parshas Vaera. Now we'll understand the connection of Chodal Tevis, the Yortzat, the Yemi Lule of the Alter Rebbe to Parshas Vaera. Kedivri HaShalah, you do him like the Shalah writes, famous Shalah, that the Parsha of the week has always a connection to the different dates that comes out in those Parshas. And this is to Vaera, was Bishon Azuvi, Bekama Shonim, is Eschal in der Woche Parshas Vaera. This year, the Tzvicha came out, Chodal Tevis, like many years, came out Vaera. What's the connection to what we said before to Chabdal Tevis? The Chidush from Tevis Chassidus Chabad. The Chidush, the specialty of what Chassidus Chabad does, was in Gal geworden of the Alter Rebbe, that was revealed to the Alter Rebbe, was B'yem HaYelula Zayin Eilako, and a special connected to the day of the Yortzeit, because on the day of the Yortzeit it says, Kol Ma'isa v'Terosav Avidosh Hashem Kol Yimechayev. Every tzaddik, everything that he did, all his Torah and mitzvahs and everything he did in his life, goes up on that day. And that gilui comes on lamata. So Chavdala Tevis every year comes on a special gilui of the Alter Rebbe, in which inyan, his inyan, what was his inyan? The gilui of Terech Chassidus Chabad. So for Terech Chassidus Vizis, what was the chidush of the Alter Rebbe over Chassidus the way it was through the Baal Shem Tov and the Mezritcha Magi? The Shleimer as ein inyan is one of the things is as is in them was his parnasmani. Hispanis means Loshen Azair. It says when Mashiach will come when Pnimis Atera will be Hispanis. Hispanis means you're fed with it. That means the Yonim of Pnimis Atera should be part of the person, should come into a Pnim, you should understand it. That's what Chabad is. We understand the Lakus with our Seichel. Und die Amunah in the Lakus wird nisgalat of Terech Chabad. This Amunah in the Lakus, which we say is an Apnimius, and it's like you feed on it, was in nisgalat of Chassidus Chabad be'efen as it soll durchnehmen dem ganzen Menschen, that it's absorbed and penetrates into the whole person. Onheimlich from Meichen Shebarosh, starting from the beginning of the head, the beginning of the person, the top of the person, which is Chabad, Chochmah Bin Das. He says it all by Im Zayin Nid Blaze Agilu from the Kudas Amunah Amasoteres, that it should be by every person, not only the Nakuda of Amunah, which is hidden Amunah, and bring it out. Now, Aninya became a Shlema. Amunah should be the whole, it should be the whole, Amunah should be in every part. And the Amunah that comes as a result of him. Even though a person that's not Shaykhis, that if you learn Chassidus Chabad, you become Shaykhis. And that's what the Alter Rebbe getan durch them was that abgetragen Chassidus Eichin Chabad Shebenefesh. Alter Rebbe did that by taking Chassidus, which is the highest niyon, and bringing down that the person's seichel should understand. Beis in chutza, the outside, which means was his leina bosar amatzis b'fnei in places where they seem to be our own entity. U'mitzadat means they're master of them. And they really don't have the munah. It looks like they don't have a munah. Alter Rebbe made that even the Chassidus at Lakush should even go there. Just like by the case we said before Meisha, that he was Megala this Amunah in the Pnimius, it came through his question, Lomar Reisa. What caused that the Amunah should come? After Meisha asked Lomar Reisa, it came through Vaera Lovis. That Vaera Lovis, David should I revealed myself to Dovis. As Odiria Isamtas, the Amunah in Lakus Vasitno Yerusha, that this that the Eibishter gave to the Ovis, and everyone has a Yerusha. So those it should become part of them, not only because of the Ovis, become part of Kanal Barucha. So this is what happened by the case of Yitzias Mitzrayim. Just like it was by the Gulat Mitzrayim, as in Schar from the Ramunah Zayin Nigel geworden, the Schar of the Munah they were redeemed, and which part we said before that the Munah became in the Pnimius that really was part of them. As I said, the Gula Amit is Hashlem, the same thing. The new Gula Mashiach When the mayonnaise, the wellspring of Chassidus are spread out outside. Everyone gets the emunah in the form that becomes part of their life, part of them. It's real to Chabad. These their chutzah mamish. It's absorbed all the way into the chutzah. That just like by Messiah, that's what brought the gula. This will also be Zayin. Osimad Malka Mashiach, and Mashiach will come. Like the Mashiach answered the Baal Shem Tov when he had Aliyas Neshamer. He asked him, when will you come? When you put some in a secha chutzah, then he will come. All the Yidden and every Yid will be zeicha to the gula amitas hashlema from Heter b'yameinu mamish. It's a deep sikha and everything has a lot to it, but we just went through very fast. We have chazer it, but it's so like deep and explains all these different inyanim. Really, what we should do is have to spend some more time, another half hour, just to go through the details again and put them all into place. But we won't have to do that on their own. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.